Hi, it's Chris and it's Dan, and we are here at Muscle Beach in sunny Southern California.
Today we're going to be focusing on legs, which is the quads, the hams and the calves.
And we'll see you in the weight room next.
Okay, so this is a hack squat machine. So this is going to be working primarily the quadriceps. So as opposed to a normal squat, which is more of an all-round leg exercise, this is more of a quadricep based one. So it will isolate the quads slightly more than the bicep femoris or the hamstrings, and also you'll get some glute involvement as well. Okay, so if you notice, my feet were shoulder width apart, my toes are pointing forwards, all of the weight should come from your heels, you should push through as hard as you can. If I was to move my feet slightly wider out and my toes pointing out, then I'm going to be working more, I'm going to shift the emphasis of where I'm working on my quads. So this is an all-round quadricep exercise, but this, further apart, is going to be working more the inner, and it will shift the emphasis towards the inner of my quadricep. If I was to bring my feet in together, it's going to shift the emphasis to the outside, to the exterior, to the lateral head.
Good look now at the leg press. Leg press machines come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. Some of them are horizontal, sometimes you're pushing vertically upwards, sometimes you're pushing more downwards. This one is a diagonal as a slope. The diagonal ones also come with a hinge attachment, but they all work pretty much the same way. They all exercise the upper legs and the hip flexors as well. Leg positioning is important, and foot positioning too. Let's do a few examples first. So as I was saying, the leg positioning and foot positioning is important. The further up the plates that your feet go, then the more hamstrings are involved, and also the hips and the hip flexors and buttocks, the gluteus maximus. The further down your feet are, then it's more increasing a lot of the quadriceps muscles. Also the position is important in terms of how far across the feet are and how close they are together. If the feet are very close together, it targets the outer part of the thigh. If the feet are very far apart, it targets the inner part of the thigh. Whichever position you have for the feet, it's very important to keep the knees over the toes. You don't swing one way or the other way, equally don't swing out or swing inwards this way. So keep the legs in a very uniform position all the way through. And the final thing to learn about it, of course, is there's an emergency stop in most machines, and you have a rest position, so it's not easy to get into too much difficulty.
This exercise is a stiff leg deadlift. It's one of the best compound movements for your hamstrings and also your glutes. Now it's really important with this exercise to keep a neutral spine and keep your chest up the whole movement. And at the bottom there's going to be a slight arch on my shoulders, but that's just really to stretch off the hamstrings. So this is how it's done. So, if you notice, the movement came from my hips pushing back as opposed to bending my back forwards, bending my chest over. So, my chest was up the whole time and my hips came back first, keeping the legs good, straight. So it's almost like a pivot. You come in backwards and then down, and then coming up, squeezing the glutes and the back of the hamstrings really hard as you're doing it, getting that peak contraction.
We're going to look now at an exercise for the hamstrings. Hamstrings are the muscles at the rear of the thigh. Sometimes called the legs biceps. The biggest hamstring muscle in fact is called the biceps femoris, femur being the bone in the upper leg. Lots of different exercises for hamstrings. A lot of them also target the quads of the front leg as well. We're going to look at just about the only exercise that I know that's based upon a machine that just targets the hamstrings without any contribution at all from the quads, and that's a hamstring curl. And there's lots of different hamstring curl machines. There's a seated one, which is very common. There's an alternate leg one, which is quite common as well. And what we're going to do now is the one where you're lying forwards, face down, which is a bit rarer. Not every gym has one of these. So that's the hamstring curl machine in a face down position. A couple of thoughts about the weight that's used. If the weight's too heavy, then you won't be able to do a full range of reps, so it's very important that you get a good range of motion. So once your legs curl up, they should be at least 90 degrees to the floor. If they can't, if the weight doesn't allow you to get up to that full 90 degree position, then the weight's too heavy and you need to adjust it. Also, I'm using a very lightweight today, and a signal when you're using a lightweight is if it's so light that the pad comes away from the feet at the top end of the motion. And all the way through you should feel this specifically just in the leg biceps, in the hamstrings, the hamstring curl machine.
So, I'm going to be doing a seated calf raise now, and this really emphasises the soleus as opposed to the gastrocnemius. So, when you have a bent leg, it creates more tension onto the soleus, and improving the soleus is brilliant because the bigger your soleus is, the bigger your gastrocnemius looks. It pops out the gastrocnemius even more. So this is how it's performed.
Yep.
So when performing this exercise, you want to make sure that if you're on a machine, as I just was, that you're pushing equally with both feet so that you're not developing one side more. And also you want to make sure you're getting a full range of motion, so you want to be stretching all the way down as far as you can go and then coming all the way up on top and really squeeze at the top. Get as high as you can and then get that extra squeeze.
Going to look now at an exercise for the lower leg, which of course is the calf on the back and is the anterior tibialis on the front. This focuses on the calf. It's a standing exercise, which means it works both of the main calf muscles, the soleus, which is underneath the calf, and the gastrocnemius, which is the muscle on the top and is the most visible of the calf muscles. Using a standing calf machine, there's lots of variants of this as well. There's seated calf machines. This one is one of my favourites. It really focuses the calf if it's used correctly. And with the standing calf machine, as with all calf exercises, the feet positioning is important. If you have your feet close together, then that targets the outer parts of the gastrocnemius, the outer part of the calf. If they're further apart, then it targets the inner part as well. So the way the feet face is important as well. To target the entire calf, keep the feet facing forwards. Otherwise you risk going from one side more than the other. So, standing calf machine, one of the best machines for the calf.